Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Conversations We Need to Have. And I am super excited and I know all of you looking at these beautiful women on my platform. And I'm just so excited to have them as my guest tonight. This is probably the most excited I've ever been about one of these conversations, because I love talking to people who can give us personal insight about their experiences as it relates to various things. I want to start out by proper introductions. We have Miss Alex Bailey. She's a third generation Maconite, born on Plant Street on January 31st, 1942. And she's going to tell us more about Tyndall Heights, formerly known as Tyndall Fields. She has worked as a community outreach associate for WellCare, communications director for the Office of the Mayor, and public relations and development counselor. So we have Miss Alex Bailey. And I also have Miss Maddie Curry. She's actively participated in the civil rights movement to end segregation. She became Washington County's first African-American deputy tax commissioner in 1979. She served as a dedicated educator for over 30 years. She was actually my 9th grade English teacher. We're going to talk more about that as well. She served as an educator for over 30 years in the Georgia public school system. She's been featured over 10 times in the Who's Who of Teachers publication. We also have Miss Sylvia McGee. She serves as chairwoman of the Macon-Bibb County Land Bank Authority, president of the Macon Lynx, and the chair of the Ruth Hartley Mosley Memorial Women's Center. She's also the president of Leadership Macon. And so we also have Miss Brenda Williams coming on, and we have Judge Henry Williams coming on. They'll be on the show a little later, so I will pause once they come in to properly introduce them as well. So I want to go ahead and get this conversation started with these beautiful young ladies on my platform. How's everybody doing?
Well, terrific.
Hanging in.
That's good. So, and we had started a very interesting conversation behind the scene. I really want to pick up there when we was talking about the education system, and I was telling our panelists behind the scene how people like Miss Maddie Curry, Miss Cynthia Cooper, the late great Dr. David Dillard, even my former principal, Dr. Beverly Glover. How all these people sort of influenced me to sort of be this person that I am now. And I didn't know it then, but education played a very big role in that process. And we was having a very interesting conversation about that, not just education as it relates to students, but as it relates to educators being educated. So I wanted to pick up there and just continue that conversation, because Ms. Bailey has some very interesting views about educators and not only what they know, but even how they present themselves to students. So Ms. Bailey, can you just share with us what you were sharing with us behind the scenes about teachers and your how perception matters to students?
Well, I like to tell people that I learned to dress for a professional role because of my teachers. My mother was a housewife. I said she dressed to show the affluence of my dad. But Miss Robinson, Miss Ware, Miss Driscoll, Miss Johnson, Mrs. Huff, who is a fantastic woman who's still with us, and fantastic teacher, I learned to dress and to carry myself from them for the corporate role that I played for almost 30 years in Philadelphia. I learned to dress in the professional way. I'm concerned that our teachers are not dressing for their professional role as the image for children. This is how you look. You dress when you come to work. I find that the female teachers, and that's where I've been really noticing, are wearing the same tight pants that the children are wearing, and some type of string up shoe or run over shoe, and a top that doesn't quite come as low as it should over their hips, and hair, store-bought hair that needs attention. You're saying to the children, this is how you come to dress to a professional situation. So you come to dress to get the professional situation. Whether it's, and professional to me is being paid. Whenever you're professional, you get paid. Whether you're a salesperson or whether you're a tech person or somebody sitting behind a desk with a staff that you manage. But most of all, it's important that we start to teach our children the proper way for everything. And for 5 days a week, for several hours a day, they're looking to the front of the room and are down the hallways, and they see people who are not dressed for their role. They're still in a teaching role. They're a teacher from the time they step on that campus until they leave. And their conduct and their reportment of themselves should reflect their professional role. Now, my favorite thing is to say to people that I, as a taxpayer, am buying an inferior product because I'm paying for the education. If it was a Volkswagen or a Mercedes or something, I could stop buying it if it was inferior, but I can't stop buying this education because I'm a taxpayer, as all of you. And I think we have to talk about that.
And I wanted to ask Ms. Curry, and as I said earlier, she was my 9th grade teacher. And people don't believe this when I say it, but I was a handful. And I distinctly remember.
I don't remember that.
See, and there's a reason why you don't remember that, Ms. Curry, because I knew that when I came in your class, I knew that you wasn't going to tolerate my foolishness. So I curtailed that behavior for that hour and 15 minutes that I was in your class. But yes, I remember Miss Curry. I remember Miss Charlene Curry, who was also the principal at Westside. And these are people that actually, believe it or not, influenced me and motivated me. And Miss Curry, when you see me on Facebook, stirring the pot with people, you created that monster. I just want to tell you, you challenged me to be a critical thinker about things outside of just language arts that you taught. And I want to say publicly that I appreciate you for that. And you have made me help make me this person that I am now. Now, I don't want to get you in trouble because some people don't like who I am now, but it is what it is.
As long as you like who you are.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I love it. I love it.
Okay, as long as you like who you are, that's fine.
Yes, so, okay. But I wanted to ask, even when it comes to when you were an educator versus where we are now with the education system, what difference do you see just based on your professional and personal experience as an educator?
That's a difficult question because I'm not really involved now, but what I saw when I was there dismayed me to a great extent because the expectations for certain children were so low. Okay, and I believe just based on my own background, matter of fact, I know that a child is capable of learning anything. What you must have is someone in the classroom that A, cares about that kid, B, knows something to teach that kid. If I am functionally illiterate, then I cannot teach you to be literate. Okay? And when you were talking about critical thinking, the thing of it is that is what education does. Education teaches you to question, to be an independently thinking person. You gather your facts, okay? You question, you assert your individuality, and you can't do that if you are not taught or if you are not, how should I say it, reinforced in your value as a person, as a human being, as a very capable human being. And that is the part that disturbs me so, because I see so many of our beautiful children. I see so many of them being murdered. And yes, I'm going to use that word, because you can murder a person by the way you treat them, by the way you talk to them. You see, people say that respect is earned. Okay, I say the only time that respect is earned is when one is being disrespectful. Disrespect is earned. Okay, but everyone, regardless of his age or hers, regardless of their circumstance, deserves respect.
I agree.
That's true.
That means
one of the things that I don't want to do is give the impression that everything belongs to be taught in the classroom. We as adults are responsible for our children, like older folks were responsible for us when we were children.
Right.
We were children. If you were doing something wrong, old lady could come and say, "Wait a minute, come here, wait, girl, come here," and chastise you on the spot. And what you hope is that you wouldn't go home and tell your mama, because your mama would make you do the switch dance. And you say, "Don't you go? You will not go out of here and have people think I haven't done my job." Now we don't do that. We see something going on in the street, and we just really like those children. It's not my responsibility. It is my responsibility. When you see these boys wearing their pants below their behinds, you have to go over and say, "Young man, may I speak with you?" Because I don't have the authority to burst into his world. I'll say, "May I speak with you?" I said, "Darling, when you wear your pants low like that, first of all, if you get some money, you got to jackknife your body to get to your pocket. You're behind in the air." And I said, and somebody might come along and think that you're advertising something. And he said, "Oh, I'm not you know what he says. I swear, I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying that you've got your body exposed. Like if I were to take off this blouse and walk around in my brassiere, you'd think it's all right to touch you, wouldn't you?" I said, but when you got yourself exposed like that, you're inviting what you might not want. And they stop and look at me. I said, plus, even if you're a thief, you can only get half as much because you got to jackknife your body to get to your pocket. I said, then you can get caught. You can't run away because the pants won't let you. And so it's not a very wise thing to wear. Actually, I have no right to go and say, "You shouldn't be wearing your pants." I don't have that right. I'm losing something here. I don't have a right to start telling them what they should not be doing. I just want to give them something to think about as they're doing it.
And I want to pause and introduce Miss Brenda and Judge Henry Williams. And I want to go ahead and do a formal introduction. I know they had some technical difficulties, but Miss Brenda is the director of the Houston Judicial Circuit's Alternate Dispute Resolution Program, and a member of the steering committee of the Georgia Women's Organization. She is also a member of the Lester Miller Transition Team. And we have Judge Henry Williams, who was the first African-American chief municipal court judge for the cities of Albany, Dawson, and Lumpkin, Georgia. He is a graduate of Tougaloo College and law school at Indiana State. He is the owner also of the Henry Williams Law Firm. How you all doing?
Well, I'm a little frustrated because I couldn't get on, and I was trying to be educated, and then that didn't work real well. So when I started, it was really. But anyway, it was a challenge. But it sounded like a great conversation, and I missed half of it. So
we just got started. It's just getting good. It's just getting good. I want to go back because one of the things that fascinates me as a young African American male, I do a lot of study of like the 1960s, the civil rights movement, things of that nature. And I want to sort of unpack some things that went on in the 60s that fascinated me, that I used to talk to my grandmother about, that I used to talk to my parents about, because a lot of times I don't think my generation really understand and grasp the hardship during that time. and seeing the color only signs and all of that. So I want to start with Miss McGee. What were some of your experiences during that time that that sort of let you know that this was not something that I can continue to live in? And also, what was that turning point for you during that time?
Okay, I was born in 1952, so I started my life in a very segregated society. And as Ms. Curry and Ms. Bailey were speaking, I think about a lot of conversations that we had at home because my parents did not want us to go out and get into trouble. So we were constantly taught about these boundaries. In terms of when you go into this store, no, you cannot use that water fountain. We're just going to go around here to the side of Crystal and get our hamburgers and we're going to go home. So a lot of discussion was talked about what you could not do so that in their mind, so that we could remain safe in a segregated society. And my daddy was a quiet person, but really had that fervor in terms of saying it's not right and we should not continue in this vein. And I can just remember in school, I went to L.H. Williams, receiving the books from Joseph Clisby, and those books being stamped with the Joseph Clisby's name in the book. And those books were old books and used books, and our teachers talking about the kinds of resources that we did not have. And I just felt then the inequity and feeling as though this is not right. But for a little one, what do we do? Remember well when we had the bus boycott, because we would rode the bus. African Americans probably were the primary customers of the Macon Transit Authority, and we had to ride in the back of the bus. And I can remember the changing point was the unity in this community when it came to boycotting those buses and the community coming together and people getting where they needed to get because we understood what it was going to take to do that.
Ms. McGee, I want to ask a question about that because you just talked about the unification of the community during that time. So my question for anyone who wants to answer it, why don't we see that kind of unity now within our Black communities locally? And we're going to talk about the national, but I'm curious about here in Macon, why is there such a divide amongst our Black community? We'll ask Miss Bailey. I saw you about to say something, Miss Bailey. Then we'll go to Judge Henry.
We moved from Macon in 1960 while I was a student at Xavier, New Orleans, to move to Philadelphia, and I was there till 1998. So a lot of things I did not see and did not have to experience anymore. Well, one of the things that I see that's different about my hometown now is that we as adults don't get involved with the children, even we don't know their last names. We sort of step back and just say, those children, those, as if there's somebody, some foreign animal or something over there someplace. We don't, even when we see little children in the supermarket with their mamas. The mamas are shopping and they're sitting there in the cart and they're just sitting there. We don't go and say, hey, baby, you sure are cute today. What color is that you have on? And they don't know, you say, I think it's red, or I think it's, we don't talk to our children, let them know they're loved and they're cherished. I called.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like you, Sylvia. I went to L.H. Williams and I remember those books. I didn't get a new book, and I think about it now, until they had integration. Zach, I went from L.H. Williams to Joseph Clisby, and that's when I got a new book. That's when I learned that you had more than like black-eyed peas and rice for lunch, because they fed us the same thing pretty much the same day, that old white lady in the lunchroom. So, I think the unity part is family, okay? And I think that was something that was really important back then, was just not your family, but the extended family, like Miss Ida May and Miss Lily and all of them who lived on the street, who used to keep all the children straight. So my belief at this point is part of the problem is, and I know that, I may get in trouble for this, is that the home structure is not as strong. And because of that, that's where I think a breakdown of unity has occurred. What you think, huh?
Well, growing up, I can think of a person who used to live in one of the buildings in the projects. She was always pregnant. They have a husband, but she's always pregnant. And the older ladies in the neighborhood really helped her along.
Mm-hmm.
If pregnancy wasn't seen as, oh, she's just a, what. Maybe she was trying to find a man to help her with her children. Maybe it's whatever. But in any case, the older women in the neighborhood helped Miss Jerry a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And they also chastised us and told us, they might call us up. We were playing on the center field, and Miss Ida would come down off her porch and say, come here, boy. Come here, girl. Let me tell you something. And she'll say, you see such and such over there? And they'd tell us the history of our neighborhood. They'd tell us, with the girls, they would say, you see that boy over there? Don't you believe it? Such and such and such and such. He's a baby maker, or see that boy over there? He's a nice boy now. If he wants to come see you, ask your mama to come see it. Those kind of little things balanced off where we couldn't sit on the bus.
But I also think too that some of that was the fear. These children don't fear anybody. Okay, that's the real deal. Because I was afraid. I didn't want anybody to tell my mom.
Whose fault is it?
No.
And we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing as adults.
I would rather take a whipping from the teacher, from the principal, from anybody. And you talk about, you know how they send the children home? Oh no, I'd do anything. I'd stay after school for a year if I didn't have to go home and face my mom.
That's right.
Well,
May
I say something here? I want to first of all pick up on something that Miss Bailey was saying. I'm falling for you tonight, dear heart. The thing of it is that the community used to be at some point. Now, don't get me wrong. It's a myth to say that every Black person was unified with the Civil Rights Movement. It is also a myth to say that most Black people participated in the Civil Rights Movement. Neither is true. Okay. All right. But I want to say that growing up in a segregated community, there was we had our own systems. Like now people call CPS. See, I remember when my mother would take in children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. If you see a child, and I'm agreeing with Miss Bailey again, Macon was very different for me. When I became aware of some of the attitudes that adults have toward children. We had an incident in the community a few years back. Little boys had a lawnmower, and they were looking for some gas. Well, they found some at a neighbor's house. They used it. The neighbor called the police. Miss Curry got upset. Okay? Because you don't criminalize children.
Right.
Okay? This is the way that I was raised. You don't call the police on a child for taking some gas. Okay? What you do, you go to the parent.
That's right.
Have him work it off.
That's right.
Okay. All right. But we are so quick to criminalize our own children. I've never seen, I was at Piggly Wiggly one night and my daughter was with me. Young lady, see, people have to be taught. You can't do that you don't know. Young lady had some little kids. And she, oh God, I mean, some of the things she was saying to me, if you don't get your, you know what I mean, loud and whatever, oh no. And I stopped because I'm going to say, no, sister. No. My baby, my daughter, come on here, Mom. Because that's who I am. That's the way I was raised. When you see children or young people engaging in self-destructive behavior, you speak.
You say something, right?
You do. You see, I was going to say something about Kroger's too, and I saw a woman.
Where did that stop, though? Where did that stop, and why did it stop?
You know, I kind of think it's one of the unintended consequences of integration, really. I think it's one of those unintended kind of things because, you know, I had grandmama home, you know, that used to help take care of us and different things like that. And so, you know, I had two sets of values, you know, there. So I kind of think that had something. What do you think, Henry? What do you?
Well, that's one of the effects of integration. See, I integrated when I was in the 8th grade. And what happened was they removed the corporal punishment because they didn't want Black teachers punishing white children. And so we changed those manners in order to accommodate, and we ended up assimilating. And a lot of value got lost because they lowered the requirements.
Well, the moral
corporal punishment was in my household. My mother had 3 switches from Peachtree, and you did something. And reported that you go get my switch. Let me whip you, like she needed my permission. And and we knew that there was going to be a price to pay in our household if we went outside and embarrassed her. She'd say, "I will not have you go out of here and have people think I haven't done my job." And that is the job of teaching us manners and conduct and the thing. We have to get back to helping these young women turn off the computers and taking away the telephones, cell phones, and help them understand that their first obligations is to the child they brought into the world. But this is what we have to do. And as older women, they might huff at you for a few minutes and you say, "Wait a minute, baby, I'm just telling you." We have to keep our cool and keep on explaining to them. It's not up to the school to do any of this. It's up to us as people, Black people, about our children.
But
I do want to say this because I when I was an elementary student at Joseph B. Riley, Frank Tompkins was my principal.
Okay.
And I saw Mr. Tompkins at a Kroger gas station, and I still remember where he they had the paddles at that time. And because again, I was not who you see before you now during that time. So I was always in the office about to get paddled by Mr. Frank Tompkins. And again, African Americans, like Judge Williams said, African American students seeing African American in authority, and like Ms. Bailey said, we may huff and puff, but we know that although we're not liking what they're saying in that moment, we know just something in our mind. I knew something was in my mind was like, yeah, this man has on a crisp white shirt with a nice tie. And I sort of emulated, wanting to be like him, although I didn't like him in that moment. I just knew that seeing an African-American male in that position of authority, even back then when I was in elementary school, was just a sight to see. And it helped me become who I am. So I think seeing people who look like us, not just in the school system, but even in law enforcement, I think a lot of things would be sort of de-escalated if kids saw people from their community policing their community.
I agree. It's just not police either, because I work in the court system. So I work with divorces and things like that. So I see a lot. And it helps when they come in and they see me. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, the
value of a role model. The value of a role model.
It is, and it helps. I think that a lot of times, I tell you this though, and I don't know if this is for Zach. This is one of these questions. I had someone to tell me everybody who won't help don't need it. I mean, everybody who need help don't
want it.
That's true.
And I think we have to come to grips with that. No, our good intentions and everything, but some of these don't want your help.
But some will accept it. So I always take the positive side. So I got a 100% thing. 15% might want my help, and that's good. I'll go where the 15% is. And I wish I could handle the other 85, but that's lost to me. So let me deal with this 15% because maybe they will then influence the rest of them But we can't turn our back on our children and say, "Oh, that's what they are. I mean, I'm getting out of here," because we can't do that.
No, I'm not saying turn your back, Alice, at all. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying that you are. I'm just making that as a statement.
Huh?
I mean, I'm not saying that you are. By no means. I don't know you.
Saying that you can get burnout, and I'm just I'm real honest, because in working with folk, and some people, I mean, you do everything you can, and I will continue to do it. But I think part of it is we've lost that story, Zach. You want to know the story, but a lot of them don't want to know, because, and I do think we have to just keep on having it.
And some of us don't want to tell the story too.
I'm going to take issue with that. I'm going to take issue with that based on my experiences in the classroom. Okay. One of the things, well, I should say that I noticed when I was in the classroom is that, and I'm going to use the example of two of my students here, but one of them wouldn't do anything. He wouldn't do anything. He'd come to class. He was not a troublemaker, but he wouldn't do anything. And I'm not the kind of person that you're not going to say anything in my class. My classroom is a very noisy place, okay? Because I want to hear you thinking. Anyway, Rufus Johnson, some of you know him, gave me We Are Black reading kit. And I started using it. And the story of Toussaint Louverture, the child that wouldn't do anything. I saw him sit up. Miss Curry, can I have that? Can I read that? Sure you can, baby. Okay? All right. From that day on, but he wanted to concentrate on that We Are Black reading kit. You see, one of the things that I have learned is that when we focus on certain children and label certain children, okay, 9 times out of 10, we are discarding our most talented persons, okay? But they have to have a purpose. They have to have something that they believe in. And yes, they have to see and have to know of strong people that look like them, okay? We are all, as Ms. McGee said, we all need role models. But one of the tragedies of our situation, being descendants of those subjected to chattel slavery, is that most of us don't know our stories. Okay?
Now,
you can't share that you don't know. Okay?
Miss Curry, I work a lot on my story, my history, my family history. That's one of the things I enjoy doing, and I've been able to trace it back, really some of them all the way back to Africa. And I do know that that's one of the things I shared with Henry for his wedding anniversary. I mean, for our wedding present, was to learn about who your dad was. And it made a huge difference to know where you come from. So I'm complimenting you on that. But it's a very difficult thing to do. But I do think as elders, I was really shocked that you reached out, Zach, because I was surprised that you even wanted to know the story.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I'm honestly fascinated by, like I said, some of the eras that we've gone in. That's a perfect segue to my next question, because we'll shift between a national historical moments, local, and statewide, and this is more of a national thing that has always fascinated me. Just from my research, I wasn't alive at that time, but it seemed like the 60s. The only decade that can rival with the 60s is 2020. With everything that's going on. We lost Malcolm X. We lost President Kennedy. We lost Dr. King. We lost the other Kennedy. We lost so many
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
And the list goes on and on.
Yeah, so many. So my question is, specifically, one of the things that has always fascinated me is, what was the culture of the country like? What was the culture of the city like during the time that we had a president assassinated? Like, where were you all during that time? What was the I guess the culture and the emotional state of the country during that time? And we'll start. I want to hear from Judge Henry first.
Well, it's interesting because when I heard that, you have the televisions like we do now, but when we got the word that President Kennedy had been shot, well, the first thing they did was release us from school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did. That's right.
The buses came early. I still didn't understand why we were getting out early, but I saw folks crying, and I'm just riding the bus home. And I think it was afternoon or something, early afternoon.
It was early afternoon. It was.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so when I got home, it was kind of shocking to me that I didn't have to go to the field. Right. So that, getting out early didn't mean nothing to me because I got to go to the field. But when we got home, my uncle had put a TV on the porch so that everybody could see it. And so that I remember as a little boy standing there watching this TV because my mom never bought a TV. Because you ain't gonna have time to watch TV. You better go to bed and get ready to get up before day in the morning and do your work. So we didn't have to work. So that caught my attention. And then I heard about the assassination and folks out there just weeping like the world was coming to an end. So I want to say to you, Zach, that it was a standstill moment.
It was a national mourning, wasn't it? National mourning.
Feeling of loss. Tremendous feeling of loss.
And that Monday was everybody stayed at home so that everybody was affixed to that television or whatever day the funeral was. It was a very sad time.
And it was, I remember the morning, I was at L.H. Williams, and I remember they rolled that TV, in there because you have the TV on the stand.
That's right.
And as a child, I was upset. I didn't really, if everybody else was crying, you cried too. But it was just such a sad, sad, sad time.
Right. It was a sad time. And you think about the 1960 election between Nixon and Kennedy was not a huge, he was not just the landslide victory there. So the country had somewhat supported Nixon and Kennedy, but there was just this mutual respect, it appeared at that, to me, a child, that the nation stood still to pay respect to an assassinated leader. And then what are we going to do next? And I think
all hope was lost.
Going to happen.
Well, that's what it was.
All hope was lost because
in the African American community, we seem to feel that was the message I heard at my house. What's going to happen to us?
Right. That's
right. Because now remember,
we had three.
The black culture voted Republican.
We had three major hits.
Again, change on the FDR, but before FDR, blacks in large voted Republican.
Because it came out of the party of Lincoln.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the time that I became conscious of that fact was when Kennedy was killed and Johnson was to assume the position, and then he had to run for re-election, or Texan, and everybody was like, what the hell are we gonna do? And people had to be convinced now to vote for a Southern Democrat because they wanted to vote Nixon because he was Republican. So the feeling was, let's go back to the Republicans. No, they're like, no, you got to give Johnson a chance because he gonna put in effect what Kennedy was working on.
That's right.
So that was a big moment, Zach, in our culture.
I want to make one correction here. The opposition for the 64 presidential race was not Nixon. Nixon didn't run until 68. It was Barry Goldwater.
Barry Goldwater, that's correct. Yeah, thank you. You're right.
Right. Barry Goldwater was against the Civil Rights Act.
Right.
He ran because that was his part of his platform, that the Civil Rights Act should not be passed.
That's right.
And,
you remember that slogan? But it was very clear what that
in
slogan.
your heart, you know I'm right. Something
I'm
like
right.
that.
That's
Okay.
right. That was the dog whistle of the day.
Yes.
And that,
So
that sounds similar to some things that we have going on now. We're not going to go. We're not going to go there yet.
Yes,
But I do want to. I want to sort of stay in that particular conversation because, like I said, we lost so many people during that time. And for me as a Black man looking and like Malcolm X and the Dr. Kings and it wasn't like years apart. You know, these were like, you know, like months to a year apart that we lost some very influential people. So what was the Black community like at the loss of someone like Dr. King and Malcolm X and Medgar Evans and people of that stature?
It was paralyzing. See, I had started in the civil rights in 1963, but I was 13 years old. Because the first time I was introduced to a jail was because I had marched around the courthouse. I don't even remember what the placard said, but I just remember being arrested, and I had to spend 2 weeks as a 13-year-old in jail, and I didn't even understand what, you know. I mean, all I know is I couldn't go home. But what happened there was, to make a long story short, was that after 2 weeks, a civil rights attorney who had represented Dr. King, C.B. King, no relation, came and got me out of jail in a night court.
He was in Albany, right? Albany.
Yeah. He also ran for governor later.
He ran for governor, that's correct.
Yeah, I worked in his campaign, yeah.
Wow, nice. And following that is, I said to myself, that's what I'm going to be. Because I got to go home and eat some home cooking. But we weren't supposed to eat the jail food. So
Zach, may I say one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, he said something that I think it should be emphasized. He said he was 13. The first time I went to jail, I was 15. Children as young as 6 years old were jailed in the civil rights movement. Okay, you know, I look at how, and it gets back to an earlier conversation that we had. Okay, I look at how, at least in my opinion, the community is devaluing children now. Children were at the forefront.
Right. And college
of the civil rights movement. Their parents had jobs. Okay, all right. It was children that were out there in many instances on the front lines, as young as 6 years old. So we need to consider that, and we need to treat our children better. Okay.
May I tell you a story something that is vivid in my mind? I was a senior at Xavier in 1962 and 63. And the nuns had told us, if you go out and do that, we'll send you home. Well, I was paying for Xavier myself. I was a working student, so I didn't want to lose my money. But there were some people who went from Baton Rouge, and they told us, and from Mississippi, from Jackson. And they said when they were marching on the highways, on the roads, the fire department would come along with their heavy hoses and turn on the water on them. It would knock the girls down. We wore long skirts, and we didn't have wet pants then. We had skirts. It would knock the girls down, and they'd slide along the road that was gravelly and tar, and the skin would be rubbed off from right under the brassiere, back of the brassiere, all the way down the thigh. With this injury, they would still be thrown in jail, and many times had to perform for the jailers, if you understand what I mean. These were very, very brave children. They were 17, 18, 19 years old. You got to remember that there were people on the front line that weren't 35 years old. These were
Right.
children. Okay. And I think
So-
it's very, very important to remember that this didn't come easy. We have to protect it. We have to teach our children about it. We have to also make sure there's never any reason for people to look at our children now in a disparaging way. It's up to us. It might be uncomfortable. They might look at you and say, you old gray head, whatever. You can't tell me what to do. And you say, well, baby, I'm not telling you what to do, but let me tell you something. Talk to them anyway.
Right.
I also
You
think
are the one who can change things for them, because too many folk my age and younger and older died and suffered and went to jail for things to change. We cannot let decay of our community and our children occur by just sitting there and saying, well, it's not my child, ain't my business. It is your business.
Every child is
All
our
of
child.
Every child. Every young woman you see that's mistreating a child in the store, you go and say, wait a minute, dog, you don't want to do that to him. I know you must be upset right now, but he's a pretty baby. You made this pretty baby. You know, you start turn her around. Because people do get upset and they lose their temper and they take it out on the least person that can defend themselves. It's up to us to stop it in its tracks.
So I wanna ask you-
Well, I have a vocabulary that's worse than hers. I don't worry about cussing anybody out, but I'm not going to use it. I'm going to just talk common sense to her. Even if I say, well, listen, why don't you do this? I'm going to stand here with this pretty baby. You go down that aisle and shop. Look over your shoulder now every few minutes, because I can't make a baby this pretty. I might run out of store with it. Make it something easy for her to accept. Take the situation and change it.
I do want to just kind of throw this out to you, Zach. I know a lot of times, because I'm really big about this, we talk about the big people that were involved in civil rights, and we forget what I call the little people.
Mm-hmm. I was about to.
And I was going to say, because I remember they said Miss Fannie Mae. Now, she used to have the liquor house down on Forest Avenue. They go up Sycamore Street, but she used to make plates. So it's a lot of people that were in that movement. They didn't have, I call the unspoken heroes, but sometimes we forget about what I call the little, it's not really little people, but the people who are actually out there that are on those front lines.
Heroes.
Yeah, those mamas who make sure that when those children, it's always one in the neighborhood to make sure the children are fed.
And I remember distinctly, my grandmother pastored a church over in Tender Heights. Essie Williams, I don't know if y'all have heard of her.
Yes.
But yeah, she pastored a church over there, and she was that person for Tender Heights. Mm-hmm. And we also had Miss Vera, who owned the store on the corner. I don't know if y'all remember her, but she was also that person that Miss Brenda was talking about. I wanted to ask this question about Malcolm X. Malcolm X and Dr. King both, if they were alive, based on what you all saw about them during that time, if they were alive now, what do you think they would be saying to us during these times?
Malcolm in the end that got a little radical.
Mm-hmm.
People keep looking at him like he was kumbaya and all this, but at the end, which is really why I think they took him out, is because he was against the Vietnam War. So a lot of times I said we romanticize where Malcolm.
Excuse me, Brenda. So was your president. He refused to go. He said he had foot spurs or some type of BS. So he was against participating in the war too.
But but the difference is that he didn't have any character. That Trump ain't got no character.
Well, let me address something Zach has asked. What it was, Zach, Dr. King and Malcolm X had this unspoken strategy. Malcolm X would create the radical movement. Dr. King would create the nonviolent movement, and they balanced each other. There was a strategy that they met privately, but never you saw them together publicly.
Mm-hmm.
May I say something? First of all, Malcolm and Dr. King were products of the same world, but at the same time, two different worlds. Malcolm
That's true.
was in the belly of that whale. Dr. King was
Right.
upper middle class Black.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. So Malcolm,
true.
you know, I love Dr. King. I love Malcolm. But one thing that I think that a lot of people miss about Dr. King was that he was indeed a Christian. Okay. Which meant that he actually thought, and I believe this with all my heart, that he actually thought that man, and by that I mean woman too, you can't spell woman without putting man in it, that man was basically good. Okay? Malcolm, on the other hand, because of his experiences, knew better. Okay? All right? Malcolm, as I said, had been in the belly of that whale from the murder of his father, the institutionalizing of his mother, to the time when the teacher told him, after he said he wanted to be a lawyer, that colored boys didn't do that. Okay? They become carpenters or something of that nature. So they had different perspectives. But as Judge Williams said, okay, they were together and not together, if you know what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Okay, you had one strategy that it appeared to be opposite the other strategy. Okay, but what it did was it drew people from one to the other. Okay, am I making myself
It
clear?
makes us reckon with because we don't want to deal with Malcolm, then we're going to deal with Martin.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you now in my young mind, and I'm open to be corrected here. In my young mind, because the way history is taught is that Malcolm was this radical person who was, you know, by any means necessary. That's the quote, and they took that as if, you know, he was just going to go on this radical revolution to end all of the racial tension.
Okay.
And go ahead, Ms. Curry. You was about to say something.
Malcolm believed, and as I age, so do I, in self-defense. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I believe, this is me now today. Okay. You know, Judge Williams was talking about how he went to jail. See, back in that day, when you entered the civil rights movement, you were given something called nonviolent training. At least I was.
Right.
Okay, and you would have scenarios where certain things would happen to you.
Yeah, they gave you simulation.
And you would they would keep happening until you learn to react appropriately, which was to do nothing, right?
Right.
Malcolm believed, and I do too now, that if you hit me, I'm hitting back.
He did.
You know,
Okay.
you
All right.
talk about Malcolm.
The thing of it is, okay, and I'm gonna tell you when I start changing with that. It was 1987 when Jose and a few people were marching in Forsyth County, and the Klan threw bricks and stuff at them. Okay, the car went out, and of course, you know, I hadn't marched in years, but I was going. That was like a personal invitation. My baby was 6 years old, and the rumor was that they were, you know, for those of us who were coming, that we were going to be attacked. I made it very well known. Spit on me, I might be nonviolent. Get on my baby, that's a totally different question.
You
Comprende?
You know, I did some research on Elijah Poole. You know, he from Sandersville, Georgia.
Yeah, my relative, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, your relative. I went down to Sandersville and talked to some of your relatives there. What I realized that Malcolm got his training from him.
Right.
Elijah Poole, now I don't know if this is true, but some say that he saw, you know, when they killed that person in the Douglas, you know, inside of the lobby, that Elijah Poole saw that.
Now, I've heard several stories. I heard that he witnessed a lynching in Dooley County because, you know, they moved to Dooley County too when he was small.
But
okay.
But he, in his autobiography, he talked about how badly he was treated. So that was the foundation, is what I'm getting, what I'm alluding to Malcolm X.
Well, Elijah Muhammad was Malcolm's teacher.
Yeah, and so that is why, you know, he would kick butt like that. Now he would, you know, and right now there's nothing more frightening than the fruit.
And also what people don't realize, because I've studied Elijah Muhammad's economic development plan. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't understand that economic development plan that Elijah Muhammad put together is something that could not only benefit the Black community, but it was literally something that could be adopted nationally and help our economy in the country. And so I think because of the radical reputation that the nation had, people just really just threw the baby out with the bathwater.
So actually, the federal government adopted some of that, though.
They did.
And they would never give them credit for it.
But they tried to. I put it like that drug rehab program.
Right.
Okay. The drug rehab program, the Nation of Islam had one of the most successful drug rehab programs. But it goes back to what Miss Bailey and I was saying. When I read about it, okay, they were talking about how they would have to build the person. Get that monkey off your back, okay? Get that white man's monkey off your back. They have to build the person. You are somebody, okay? And see, that's what you have to do with our children now, because we've been so lax. You have to do what we call constructivism. You have to build up them. Okay, you are somebody. That was probably the best and most resounding slogan we had during the active civil rights years. No matter where you live, whatever your circumstances, who your parents are, who you may be kin to, what you wear, what you don't, you are somebody. And you should be treated as such.
So I want to ask 3 more questions before we get off of here. We had the presidential debate Tuesday night, Wednesday night. So, and I want to ask about one specific incident by the president when he was asked to denounce white supremacy. And he gave what I would consider a rallying call for a white extremist group called the Proud Boys. And my question is not necessarily about that, but it's about the idea that thing is still going on in 2020. Oh, and we just lost Representative John Lewis, and we just lost Reverend C.T. Vivian. And I was telling a friend of mine, the saddest part about those 2 pioneers dying is that they died with the world looking like what they was fighting for all these years to keep it from becoming. Mm-hmm. So my question is, do you feel like we have advanced from, you know, and I'm just going to pick the 60s as an era to 2020. Do you feel like we have been set back as a Black community nationwide? And do you feel like, of course, there's a lot of work that should be done, but do you feel like we have made good strides based on your personal perspective? We'll ask Ms. McGee first.
Oh, wow. And that's for me, the answer would be convoluted. I think that we can parallel some things with the 60s and the current situation. I think that there are other things that are very, very different. I think the understanding of what we were looking to have the nation understand that message is understood with a wider, more diverse audience now than it was then, I believe. I believe that Zach, I'm going to have to pass because I can't really come together with my thoughts right now. But there are a lot of differences with the 60s and now. And I think some structures that were in place are starting to be dismantled. So we find ourselves back in the same place.
I think we're back. I think we progressed. I think that at one point it seemed, there's the difference between the big difference between then and now is access to education. Not for all of us, but I'm just talking about access with social media and things like that. So that,
but a lot of that's being dismantled. A lot of a lot of things are being dismantled. The Voting Rights Act is being dismantled. The public education is being dismantled. When you look at charter schools and those other kinds of things, and the funding and what have, there's a lot of dismantling. In a different kind of way.
And that to me is scary. Even with the Supreme Court and and the way what Clarence, Uncle Thomas. And up in there.
Matt, can I ask you a question? May I ask you a question? May I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
If someone told you today that you had to ride at the back of the bus, would you do it?
No, ma'am.
That's progress.
That's true. That's true.
The fact that I have a
told
choice.
you that you had to pay for your sandwich in the front of the store, or walk around in the alley in the back and get it where you have the trash cans, which you do it, as we had to do it New Way on Cotton Avenue in the 50s.
Wow. Wow.
It might not be, for every how should I say it? For everything that was we thought was accomplished. There have been some things that, how should I say, have retrogressed or regressed, however you want to say it. But what has not changed is your mind. You hear me, Zach?
Mm-hmm.
That hasn't changed, okay? You are not going to the back of the bus. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's not because no one or anyone tells you not to go. It's because, no, dude, you got the wrong one. Do you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
See,
but that, well, and I would agree with that, but
I'm sorry, I can
when I
barely hear
moved back
Miss
home
Bailey.
to Jamaica, I had a new set of friends, and they're like friends. We care. We teach each other fairly. We're kind. They're sick. I'm the first one out there to help. Recently, they've been right here with food, getting my grass cut, calling every day, see if I need anywhere, being my friend. So yes, that has changed tremendously. When I call them by their first name without Miss in front of it, okay? I don't have to go over there into that back door. Sure, that's changed. So a lot has changed in general culture and the way people interact with one another. Yes. Is it enough? Probably not.
No, it isn't.
Is it quiet? Some of the things blatant is no longer blatant. Okay. So things have changed, and change takes place all the time. All the time. We've changed. We have more respect for them. Somehow, many of us have lost that too. We need to work on ourselves as well.
I would agree.
As we
I want to end this particular conversation like this because I can honestly be here for hours and hours sitting at the feet of our elders talking about stuff like this, and I'm not just saying that. But I want to end this because we have quite a few young people watching. And so I want, starting with Miss McGee, then Miss Curry, then Judge Henry, then Miss Brenda, and then we'll end with Miss Bailey. I just want you to take about 30 seconds and speak to our generation about what we can do to make not only our city and state better, but make our country better.
I want people to invest in viewing and looking at who they are, and I think seeing themselves as being worthy. I want people really to listen to the stories, because I believe in learning stories. And it's going back to the Bible when you picked up those stones, and we need to tell those stories about what those stones represented, so that there can be an understanding and some generation passing of wisdom and knowledge. Because if I know where I've been, I can understand better where I need to go.
Ms. Curry?
If I were speaking to young people today, I would say what I've always said: know who you are. You are somebody. You are kings and queens. Treat yourself that way. Love yourself. I love you. You were loved before you were born. There were those of us who were fighting for you, who will continue to fight for you until the day we die. Love yourself. We love you. You are worthy. And there is nothing, don't let anybody tell you that you are not capable. Don't let anybody tell you that you are somehow inferior. No matter where you live, no matter where you come from, no matter whether you have material things or not, if anyone steps to you, no matter what his or her position, and says to you or acts in a way towards you that you are not valuable, you tell them. If you don't feel comfortable saying, I am valuable because I know it, said Miss Curry said it, and she says, if you don't like it, she stands 5'3" 1/4, 7.5 shoe. How about that long? See her.
That's my 9th grade teacher right there.
I see why you didn't act up.
Yeah.
Right.
Judge Henry?
Well, you know, I would say to young folks is what I learned through my civil rights background, and that is, boy, no matter what you do, you get you a good education, because no matter what happens to you, can't nobody take it away. I'm telling you just how they phrased it. Can't nobody take that away. You can go different ways and do different things in life, but if you got a good education, you will live with that and you will die with that. And so that was my motivation in all of the discouraging times that I've had in high school with integration. Had to fight every day in school. Just, you know, I had no peace. It just every day I had to fight a white person that thought I shouldn't be there. And I wanted to get them to understand I didn't want to be there. My mama signed me up to be there. I didn't want to be with you folks. But I had to fight my way through and still get an education. And so when it came time to decide, okay, now I'm graduating, what am I going to do? So I went to the guidance counselor. He said, you need to go to trade school and go to the black trade school in Albany. And I thought, trade school? I don't want to trade. I want a college education. So you're not college material. So I had to determine that I was, because I couldn't get the recommendations. I couldn't get all of the things set in motion that I wanted. So I did the research, found out which schools would understand my story, and I wrote them letters. And the best letter I got back was Tougaloo College. And Zach, I do like the way you pronounce my college, because some folks call it Tougaloo.
Yeah, thank you.
Tougaloo wrote me a letter and said, tell us more about your story. And I did. And they accepted me. And with that education, they empowered me to then, I got a scholarship to go to graduate school, to go to law school. And I had a big decision to make because they gave me more money to go to the graduate school. But I said in that courtroom that night, I want to be a lawyer. So I took the Lester Scholarship, went to law school, and I got to work for my hero, C.B. King. That's where I got my start. I worked for him for 10 years. That's how come I know hard work. I know determination. I know the ins and outs of how to practice law and how to take over a courtroom no matter where I am. I may not know anybody, but I walk in there with my head high and shoulders high because he taught me how to be the best lawyer there you ever can be. And you got to learn how to speak the King's English. It's because CB was erudite. And so the short story I'm saying to them is be determined, get a good education. Don't be discouraged because somehow with us who did the civil rights like Ms. Curry, you kind of got discouraged a little bit because the folks who benefited from the civil rights were the weaker ones. They got the positions because they were tokens. But that fought the struggle didn't get the positions. You had to work for them. You had to earn it. They were not given to you. And so when you get in a position, young folks, always remember you got to reach back and help somebody else up to where you are. Don't be an island unto yourself. That's the thing I want to leave you with.
Thank you. Miss Brenda?
You know, I went back to school at 39 years old, and I always wanted to go to Marsh Brown College because I was an AME. And I had a professor up there who graduated from Harvard, and he told us, and I never forget, he said, the water will always taste like the pipes. And what I realized that all the things that I thought I knew that I've been taught at these different schools was not really true. So I started to study and study and study. So what I want to encourage young people to do is to study for yourself, learn for yourself. Don't depend on the school to educate you and program you. You go out there and get it yourself, because the water will always taste like the pipes, meaning that if you're not creating your own history, and I mean writing your own history, then you don't know what you got. And half the time it lies. So I learned from Marsh Brown how to do that. So I want to encourage you out there that's listening. If you're thinking about going to college, go to an HBCU.
Absolutely.
Go to an HBCU, because that was my foundation. L.H. Williams started it. But I'm saying to you that it was my HBCU experience that taught me how to think outside of the box. It taught me critical thinking and analysis. And I do believe that had I not had that experience, I would not be as successful as I am today. And I want to just compliment him on what he said. So many times, I think because I started late in life working, that I didn't have some of the opportunities that many of the people out here had. But it's so important. I know so many Negroes are getting positions and they become whiter than white. Right. And they forget. They really do forget how to pull somebody up. That's I went to Miss McGee with a situation. She was able to give me wisdom. I'm saying to people out there listening, if you need something, call me, email me, text me. I'll help you if I can. But we have got to do a better job of pulling up. And that's one of the things that's missing in this today's community that was prevalent in the old community. If you didn't know how to write a letter, Miss So-and-so knew how to write the letter. Yeah. Or if you didn't know what to say, so-and-so could go to you and they would tell you what to say.
And you listened.
And you listened and you did it and you were very successful. So that's what I want to leave, don't be so proud that you don't ask.
Right.
Right. That's a good point.
Miss Bailey, my daughter apparently knows you. She wants me to say her name is Macondria, and she wants me to tell you hello.
You said you would
tell her she should be in touch with me. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that we have to work together. We'll stop doing that. If one of us gets a little bit of more than the other, we say, he thinks he's somebody now.
That's
Well,
right.
he is somebody. So are you. So are each of us. We need to work with one another as a team. We have always done that. It's not something new I'm introducing. We need to build together as we used to do. I tell you, remember Tulsa. Remember Auburn Avenue. Remember Pleasant Hill. Okay? Remember Broadway. Remember Cotton Avenue. We built those things. We have to get back to working together and spending our money with each other, trusting one another, helping to build one another. We got to get to know one another again. And one of the things we cannot do is to forget our background. Those who came before us, those who made the sacrifices, those who laid the groundwork. We owe it to them and to ourselves to not be stupid and forget it. Build upon it. No matter who tries to come and tear it down, go back and build upon it. Okay? And you don't have to be a PhD. You don't have to be a college graduate.
Right.
You got to be a person with your own skills and talents and know-how and compassion for one another. And that's what I grew up with. People who were compassionate, people who taught me what they knew. And I didn't know what they knew. I didn't know how to do this, that, or the other. I knew how to do something over here. But they taught me how to do theirs too. So now I became this person. And I want you, with both of those skills or both of that information, I strongly beg you to talk to our children. You see a bunch of boys standing on the corner with the pants down below their butts and not really about anything. Go and talk to them.
Right.
So how you doing, fellas? Son, what do you want to do? Son, what's on your mind? Do you know how to do all this technology? If you do, maybe that's where you should concentrate in your neighborhood. There are probably some old ladies with gray hair just like me that don't know what they do with their computers. Maybe that's $10 or $15 or $20 for you there. Go talk to them. See if you can help them out. I tell the story about when I first got a cell phone and it was beeping, and I didn't know what it was. It was about 10, 12 years ago. So I saw this kid and he had 1 to 2 years. So I figured he knew what it was about. And I asked him, what's going on here? And he said, you have a text. I said, what is that? He said, you had a message. I said, well, I'll give you $2 if you tell me what it says. And he did. I said, I'll give you 2 more if you answer it for me. Then I said, where do you live? I want to talk to your mama because, maybe you can tell me some more about this telephone. To let him know that I respected what he knew. He knew more than I did about that. But then I held up my car key when he said to me, you don't know how to text. I held up my car key. I said, I know how to drive. And he laughed and I laughed and let him know that I know how to do things and you know how to do things. And we both need each other right now. We are not giving our children the respect that they deserve.
Amen. Amen.
I want them to give it back to me. I want them to show a certain population of people, this is who we are. This is our child. This is our children. This is who they are. So they can be accepted. If we don't get busy working on that, people are going to come to the conclusion that they don't have a value and they don't have a worth. And that's our fault. Ain't somebody else's fault, y'all. It's our fault and our obligation and our duty. You don't have to know his last name, first name, or where he lives, or she, to be a counselor to them for that moment. They might walk away, but they might remember too, like you did when you were young, when somebody old lady got in your business. You didn't like it, but you thought about it. It stayed with you. It still does. We have an obligation. It's not in the books. It's in our hearts and our responsibility. And I ask you to please join me in getting in young folks' business and guiding them.
Well, thank you all so much. I cannot say how honored I am to even be sitting here talking to all of you. And I promise you, we're going to do this again. I'm definitely going to be in touch with Judge Henry Williams just because I have so many questions that I just want to just sit. I'm gonna have to take you to lunch one day and we'll just sit and talk.
I'd love to talk. I didn't want to dominate here.
Oh, yes, sir.
I like to listen and learn too.
Yes, sir.
I met Ms. McGee. I certainly wanted to hear what she has to say. She espouses a lot of wisdom, and I'm learning about Ms. Curry, who helped one of my heroes when they ran for governor. So we have a lot we have to talk about. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely have to do this again very, very soon. But I want to let you all know I appreciate all of you and what you have contributed to my generation. Ms. Curry specifically. Again, I said again, this is my 9th grade teacher. So I say that everywhere I go, Miss Curry and Miss C.D. Cooper. So I want to again say thank you, and it was an honor and a pleasure to talk to all of you.
All right, darling. You have a good night.
Y'all have a good night as well.
Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
thank you so much. And it was a pleasure to be with all of you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.